Our guest today is Alex DeMille. He's a writer, director, and film editor. He grew up in Long Island, received a bachelor's degree from Yale, and a master in fine arts from UCLA. His films and screenplays have won multiple awards, including My Nephew Emmett, which was nominated in 2018 for an Academy Award for Best Live Action Short. But Alex took a step back from cinema and decided to apply his creative genius to writing a thriller, The Deserter, with his father, best-selling author, Nelson DeMille.
Most dangerous deserter is tracked to the world's deadliest city. Only one team of military investigators can bring him back alive. The hunt is on. The Deserter. New from best-selling author Nelson DeMille and Alex DeMille.
So welcome to the show, Alex. We're happy to have you join us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So let's get right into it. So my first question is, so your debut novel, The Deserter, just hit the bookstores. It's right here.
Yeah,
great cover, by the way.
I like that.
Oh, thank you.
So can you tell us the genesis of the idea of the story, and also what made you and your father finally decide to collaborate on something?
Yeah, so he was contractually obligated to collaborate with someone. He started a new contract with Simon & Schuster, and their idea, he usually does a book every 2 years. And a lot of writers of his stature and that sell the way he does are able to do one a year, either by working with other people or just by, I don't know. Everybody's got a different process, but that really was not his process. And they thought, well, let's have you do 3 solos, and then the odd years, and you're not having your own book out, you'll do a co-authored book, and those will take half of your time. And while you're working on that, you can work on your other book as well. So that was the idea. And without getting too into it, they kind of had a submission process for established writers. And from there, they picked somebody. He and the publishers together picked somebody. He was a talented writer, but they worked together for, I'm not quite sure how long, but they really developed the story, and it just wasn't clicking. They kind of took the concept and then went somewhere with it. It wasn't working. So at some point, I just pulled the plug on the book, and he put it in the back burner. So it was this project that was called The Deserter, and it was about 2 CID agents who are tasked with finding an infamous deserter, loosely based on Bo Bergdahl, who had been captured and now has popped up in an exotic locale of some sort. So that's what the project was. And at some point, he decided, I'm not quite sure. He describes it like he was sitting in his easy chair and just suddenly remembered that his son is a writer. I don't know how it actually happened in his mind, but one day he called me up and he literally said, "How would you like to make some money?"
Washing cars.
And I already knew about the project. I'd already known. I hadn't read anything that they'd been working on, but I knew it existed, and I knew it was kind of causing a lot of grief, and that it had they basically not fully canceled it, but they kind of put it on the back burner. So I wasn't initially I was flattered, obviously. I wasn't that I was a little trepidatious for a lot of reasons. One of them being that this is already something that had a history. I wasn't kind of there for the beginning of it. But I pretty soon realized that I wasn't going to be given a book I had to rewrite. This was like, we're going to take this concept that the publisher already likes, which is always good. You don't have to like re-pitch something, and then make it our own and develop it. So, also I've been writing screenplays the last many years. I'd kind of attempted a couple of ridiculously ambitious novels in my, when I was like 25, but I hadn't really done any prose writing in a long time. So not that I didn't think I could write, but I wasn't sure if I could write a Nelson DeMille book, or if I could write a book that would be at least enough in the ballpark of what he does, that when people pick up a book with his name on it, they'll kind of be getting what they think they're going to be getting.
Yeah.
So what I did was, I thought about it. I basically wrote a memo to him of, here's what I liked about the idea. Here's what I thought, a couple of things I didn't think were working and what I think were missing. And I basically, I don't know if I should like give a log line of what the book is kind of about at this point, or.
Yeah,
I mean, sure, let's hear it.
A little bit, but not
a little
too
bit
much
of background. Tease
Yeah,
it.
so basically the story of so these is a male-female CID, it's Criminal Investigation Division in the U.S. Army. They're responsible for investigating any crime involving U.S. Army personnel wherever it happens in the world. So that was the setup, and the idea was potentially to set up a series. So you have this male-female duo. They can go anywhere in the world. They can be investigating any kind of crimes. That was the idea that Simon & Schuster really liked. And the Bo Bergdahl case, he was for people. I think he was private who just walked off of his his base in the remote area of Afghanistan, been captured by the Taliban for about 2 years, and then had been traded. This is during the Obama administration. Been traded for 5 like high-ranking Taliban commanders to be gotten back. So that was kind of the germ of it. I don't know. Do you guys did you listen to Serial, the podcast about him? You know,
no, I didn't catch that episode.
Yeah, so there's like, you know, they did the first season was like a murder, I think in Maryland, and that was that was a huge hit as far as podcasts go. And they did a second season all about Bo Bergdahl. And I listened to the whole thing before I'd ever even knew anything about the Deserter Project, and I was really into it at first. And then as it went, no fault of the people making the podcast, it was like they were looking for this like mystery and this like dark heart of this guy, or there was going to be something really interesting at the core. And then when they got there was kind of nothing there. And I kind of felt like there's something like this. It's a good premise, this side of the Deserter, but like we shouldn't be trying to draw too much on him for the story. So my idea was, okay, instead of a private who's kind of for his own odd reasons just wanders off, let's make him kind of more of a you know, Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, Colonel Kurtz kind of guy. He's highly trained, highly lethal, highly skilled, and he's perhaps gone off the deep end. And the reason he deserts is a mystery. And instead of being traded by the U.S. government, he's actually escapes his Taliban captors in a very gruesome way. Mm-hmm. And the place he comes to is not a. I think their original setup, the guy was going to be hiding in Paris, and then it was Thailand. And I said, well, let's have him hide somewhere nobody would really want to be. So I said, why don't we set it in Venezuela?
Yeah. You don't want to go there right now.
No. But maybe so why would someone go there? He's not there to hide. He's there for a reason, right? There's no reason to go there just to, well, because it wouldn't be a bad place to hide, I guess, if you know what you're doing. But so I came to him with that. I'm like, let's make the Deserter kind of an antagonist in this story. And he's a guy who's himself is dangerous, and he's in a dangerous place, just to kind of like up the stakes. And he really liked that. So we started developing that together and kind of came up with a rough outline. We didn't really know where we were going with it, but we took took the retooled pitch for the story back to Simon and Schuster, and they liked it. I think they also liked the marketing potential of Father Son. They weren't so sure about me, but they figured it was on him because he had picked me. So if it didn't work, it was his problem to deal with it. So, but it worked out. So that was kind of
I'd say.
Yeah.
So Alex, tell us about the development of Scott Brody and Maggie Taylor, who are your co-protagonists with The Deserter. You know, kind of without giving too much of it away, you know, what makes them tick, and can you reveal a little bit about their relationship?
Sure, yeah. So Scott Brody is, so there's 5 rankings, I believe. Yeah, 5 rankings in the CID as far as warrant officers, 1 through 5. I think he's warrant officer 4, so he's kind of almost at the top of his profession. He's in his mid to late 30s, and he's been doing this for about a decade. And Maggie Taylor is much newer. I think she's only been doing it for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and I think she's a warrant officer 1. And they both come from very different backgrounds. He was like an upstate New York farm boy. She comes from Appalachia. The thing they have in common was they were both enlisted. He fought in Iraq, and she was a civil affairs officer in Afghanistan. And she wasn't frontline, but through circumstances of being what they are in that war, she ended up seeing combat anyway. So they're both combat veterans, both end up for very different reasons getting involved in Army law enforcement, and are paired together. And you know, like a lot of good duos, they're foils. They're very different than each other. I think at first blush, he's the brash, iconoclastic wise ass that my dad often writes for his male leads. And she was a little trickier, because not to rag on his female characters in general, but I did want to make sure she wasn't just either just a love interest or even just a sidekick. I mean, she has to have her own like inner life and her own background. So we decided that because of the kind of work she was doing in civil affairs, which involved, I think they're actually technically part of, you know what, I'm going to say something I'm not even sure if it's true. They do have some sort of interface with special forces, you know, because I mean they're both kind of on the ground and dealing with civilian population in a war zone in different ways. But we thought, if this is what she's doing, and she's going to villages and dealing with like tribal elders and all these things, first of all, she's got to be smart, she's got to be brave, and she also can easily be put in a situation, a dangerous situation. You know, it's a high risk job, even though it's technically not a combat job. So we, you know, pretty soon in the story, you learn that there are some rumblings about her. That you know that she, I think she was involved with a CIA guy romantically, and maybe that's all it was. Maybe there was something else. You know, the civil affairs they could be a little murky about who they are working with in Afghanistan. So right off the bat, he's the one who is more likely to kind of fly off the handle. But she's kind of a cooler customer, but might be in ways a little bit more dangerous than him, or at least has a little more mystery to her.
Hey Alex, let me ask you. So in the beginning, there's a whole line about why did you shoot the mule? Who came up with that? Was that you or your dad?
You know what? It wasn't me. I gotta be honest. That was the only thing from the original project that that survived.
I would have kept it too.
I thought it was great. It didn't conflict with any of the things I was suggesting we change. So yeah, I thought it was great. So a lot of that. Well, I'd say the writing of that was my dad. As far as who came up with it, was it him or the other co-author? I can't say. I'm not even going to say because I don't know.
Yeah, you know.
That was the only. So those chapters. That was the three of the initial chapters are set in Quantico, and what I basically did. Those are the only ones I was kind of given. To my dad, said these are chapters I wrote or rewrote or whatever it is, and this is what we have from the other project. So I took those 3 chapters. This basically comprises a mission brief, right?
Right.
For our two heroes, and the stuff about their prior case of he ends up shooting a mule in the ass while they're trying to catch a guy. I thought it was great. It was kind of a light tone before launching into this kind of darker story.
Right.
And
I think
it's something about their characters. So
set it up pretty good.
Yeah. I can't take credit for that, but I take credit for not deleting it.
Yeah, okay.
Kept something in.
Hey, that's
Good stuff.
That's a big deal.
So Scott and Maggie, we've been talking about there with the CID, and most people in general know the NCIS show, or we see the CIA involved in these storylines and all these alphabet agencies. So did the premise decide what organization they were going to be a part of, or was that a conscious decision to go with the CID organization before, which came first, I suppose?
Well, I think my dad decided. I think he was the one that decided to make them CID agents because he had some success with that. 2 of his previous books, The General's Daughter and Upcountry, the main character there, Paul Brenner, is a CID agent. And then, The General's Daughter was then made into a motion picture with John Travolta in the late 90s, I believe. And especially in that one in particular, he had a female partner, and I think he just thought that worked, and he wanted to return to it, and he thought it was a logical way to kind of do a detective series while still drawing on his own military background and military understanding. So it kind of seemed like a good fusion of those things, which is probably why he decided to write it in the first place back in the 90s. But it was kind of a conscious decision to bring that back and explore some other ways to use a CID profession.
Right, I don't think most people don't know much about it anyways. It's not like common. Like NCIS clearly is something that people hear a lot because of television, but for CID, I doubt the average person knows anything about it.
No, and it's actually kind of hard to find out a lot about it unless you actually talk to CID agents, because there's not like good books out there about it or really anything. There was
the Wikipedia page doesn't have everything you need.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be shocked how much Wikipedia research I ended up doing at some point. you gotta verify,
Absolutely.
But there was. I think they tried to make a show about it, of course, because they're like, oh, NCIS was the hit. I think they made a pilot. I watched part of it. It looked kind of terrible, but I don't think the show ever ended up happening.
And then have all the spin-offs for NCIS anyway. So I mean, you spoke real briefly about Bo Bergdahl and how The Deserter is loosely based on it. How did your opinion of the real incident impact the story, and did writing the story impact your opinion of what happened, Bo Bergdahl?
I didn't know a whole lot about Bo Bergdahl until I just happened to listen to that. It was probably, maybe it could have been even 10 hours, a serial podcast, about him. And the thing I took away from it that was interesting was that he, and it wasn't even him as a person, but it was, okay, there's two things about him. One was that um, he really wanted to be, he wasn't this guy who just joined the army because he had nothing else to do and then got scared and ran off. You know, that's not his story. He really, really like wanted to be the best soldier he could be. He was really gung-ho about it. And his reasons for leaving were, if you believe him, had to do with, he felt like there were these injustices happening on the base, and that somehow him leaving would trigger some sort of, you know, he could go over the head of his commanding officer and get the attention of somebody else. That's at least what he has to say. But
Right.
the idea is that so that the idea of a character who is in a way in it for the right reasons, or at least they think of the right reasons, and kind of has this posture of I want to be the ultimate soldier. You know, I took that away from that in developing our deserter, who's a Delta Force Captain Kyle Mercer. So we developed him as somebody who, you know, we talk about a lot of people in the military maybe come from military families, or they, you know, have some sort of experience with, you know, at least with firearms, or there's something in their background that makes them feel like they're appropriate for combat. But we said something about how he, you know, played a lot of Call of Duty and got it. He was like a kid from Southern California, but he was like, just, it wasn't organic. It was just that it was almost an image thing, you know. He's like, I want to be this thing. And I thought that was interesting, because then there's something kind of performative about it, you know. And if you're able to be that way and then actually climb the ranks to be as elite as he was, and then the act of desertion is again, it's not about I'm going to run away because I'm scared, because why the hell would you run away if you're going to be in like the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan? That's going to be way more dangerous. So,
yeah, it's the wrong place to run away from.
Exactly. The desertion itself is like a performative action. It's making a point by deserting, which I thought was interesting about Bergdahl, which we kind of carried over to the story without giving anything away about why he does it. There's
the whole
it's not
the why is very important.
Exactly. And with a Delta Force captain, you're not going to assume it was cowardice anyway, even though that's
well, yeah, that's the crazy thing, and those are the questions that two protagonists, Maggie and Scott, ended up dealing with.
Yeah.
So you touched on it earlier about Venezuela, and I thought it was a really intriguing, dramatic choice to go from Afghanistan to an equally tumultuous place in the world in Venezuela. And I was just wondering what connected the dots for you of those two places and led you guys to take Mercer there.
Honestly, the beginning, the initial decision was as simple as, we should set this somewhere dangerous. I don't want to do the Middle East. I feel like it's overdone, and I don't really want this to be about terrorism. And wherever I set it, I know that I'm going to have to spend a lot of time researching it and learning about it. And I was fascinated with Venezuela anyway. So it was a little bit of a, you know, there were certain, before I'd even thought about what the dramatic potential of why somebody, any kind of connection between Afghanistan and Venezuela, I kind of made that choice. And then I ended up bearing a lot of fruit, I think, when I started to learn more about the country. And there are all sorts of other connections, you know, like we didn't even get into in the book, about like the vice president of Venezuela is, I believe, Lebanese, and has some potential ties to Hezbollah and, you know, Iran. And then through that, of course, that's also an alliance with Russia, which is then also involved with the Venezuelan government. So there was like a whole other angle. And there is something I threw in there in an initial draft about how when they got to the Caracas airport, they noticed a larger than they would expect number of Middle Eastern people that were, you know, coming through customs. And my dad was like, "What the hell is this? What is this about? Why'd you put this in here?" So I don't know. I think maybe
it's real world, Dad. It's real world.
I started talking about this thing with Hezbollah. He's like, no, it's too much. Like, you already got, you know, and he's good about that.
He's like, Alex, focus.
He's got that. That's where his experience comes in, you know. And I was trying to, because, you know, I'm like, oh, this is a book. This is like this book. I mean, you guys can see how long this book is, and I think there was a point when I was just kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink, and he was good about keeping me focused. But anyway, but then once we had chosen it, I started researching it. I was thinking about what is the thread between Afghanistan and Venezuela, and Obviously, you could think maybe drugs. That's one possibility. But the bigger point being, Afghanistan is it's a place there in the United States has been a war for a long time, and Venezuela is a country in a continent where the United States has obviously been meddled for a long time. So there was a way in which is this, if we're talking about the security apparatus and this kind of unending war, is there a way in which the United States getting back involved in South America is almost like it's almost like retreating back to your own hemisphere and kicking it around in your own backyard again, because you overextended yourself in a way, and now you're kind of coming back. And we get into that obviously in the book in ways we don't want to reveal, but I thought there was something interesting there about this idea of kind of there's this mass apparatus in search of missions, and in search of purpose, and there's if Venezuela is a place where the United States government or special operations or intelligence community can find purpose the way they tried to find purpose or did find purpose elsewhere.
So your background was in film, a strong background in film. So what was it like for you adjusting to a novel form, a fiction novel format? For all of us, it seems like it's a whole different world. So what was like that for you?
Yeah, creatively and professionally, a whole different world. On the professional side, I couldn't have walked into a better deal. I walked into, my dad already has this book deal. He's like, here's your agents, here's your publisher, and here they want the book by this time. And,
happens for everybody, right?
Obviously and unless you have that kind of, unless you have that kind of access as a screenwriter, which I do not, it certainly doesn't hurt to have him as a father, but it's really a different world, New York versus LA and publishing versus film business. But it is harder to get noticed and to get people to read your stuff, and then once they do, to know what to do with it. And there's a million different. If you want to write a book, once you know what kind of book you want to write, okay, there's these many publishers. This is, to me at least, and again, this might be my own bias, but it just seems like it's in some ways less complex. And in Hollywood, are you trying to write something for yourself to make? Are you writing an independent film? Or are you trying to write something you're going to sell to a studio? Or there's a million different things to consider when you're even setting out writing a screenplay. Like, it has to have a purpose other than just being itself.
Yeah.
And then you got to find funding.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. And
that's an animal.
I had the good fortune of getting, I got representation in LA. I had a manager, just getting through I did a short film, and ended up getting press, and then I got a few phone calls, and it's just like, two people read an article about you, and suddenly people think you might matter for a second, and that helped me. And then through him, I was able to at least I had like a pipeline, every something. You can't, if you just start putting your screenplay in the mail and like sending it to Paramount, like chances are, even if it's really good, nothing will ever happen. So you need to kind of find your way into those gatekeepers, which I did somewhat successfully, not that successfully. Was still kind of working on it when I got the phone call from my dad. But
so what did you enjoy, or maybe not enjoy, about going through this process, in this medium versus screenwriting and Hollywood itself?
I enjoyed the fact that I wasn't writing something that then was going to be interpreted by somebody else other than the reader. It was really nice to know that we were building the foundations, and then we were also going to put the final touches on it. The script. Even if you have the good fortune of writing a screenplay that then you yourself are going to direct, and even if you're then a lot of independent filmmakers do a lot of it themselves, just because for ego or for money reasons or both. But at the end of the day, you still have actors, you still have a cinematographer, and you have somebody else who's probably writing the music. And it's one of the wonderful things about filmmaking. But at the same time, you're never you're never the full auteur that a lot of filmmakers pretend to be. You have to rely on the skills of other people. And with this, we obviously had the skills of our editor and the skills of my father in this case, but it was nice to know the document that he and I were working on together was the product.
So you're closer to the end user.
Yeah, exactly. On the other hand, with screenplays, the exciting thing is this being really spare with how you can describe things, and knowing that if this ever comes to fruition, like the thing that you're you're writing on the page is actually going to be real. You know, that's incredible if that happens, but of course that's rare. Whereas many screenplays actually get produced. So I would say on the whole, it was much more pleasurable for me to write this book, even though it was also a lot harder and took a lot longer than most screenplays.
I've not had your success, but I came from a screenwriting background, and one of the ways that I like it is that you could write a perfect script and it could still be a crappy movie. Yeah. But if you write a great book, it's a great book, and there's not a lot of change there.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I don't know if you guys have had this, but I've seen films I really like Drive. You guys see Drive with Gosling, and I thought I really loved that film, and I'm like, so much of this is on the director and the actors and the score. Not that it was a bad script, but I'm like, the script could have been like 30 pages long. And I had a really hard time imagining writing that kind of movie and then handing it to somebody else and knowing that it's going to become that. You know, that's like the other side of it. Now.
So another part of your background in film has been as an editor, and I know you were edited My Nephew Emmett, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Live Short. And what I want to know is how did those editing skills in film translate to editing the story with your father? And as an editor, did you drive him crazy?
That's interesting. There are some ways in which film editing feels more like novel writing than screenwriting does, you know, because you are kind of in most ways making the kind of final product, and you're dealing with like raw material, whether you're the one that made the raw material or not. Editing, working on that film was a pleasure. I mean, you start out as an editor, you're often you're a storyteller. You're also like a problem solver. And once you see the footage, you realize what kind of problems you're going to have and how many problems you're going to have. And it's really good when you at least see, okay, these are good actors, and this is a good director, and these are good cinematographers. And I know that it's a difference between trying to find the good in a pile of bad versus trying to find like the right thing in a pile of good things. You know, and that was really nice. I'm like, the actor's going to nail it most takes, and the actor's going to nail it, and they're going to be saying lines that are not terrible, and so I don't have to Frankenstein this thing into something. It's more about at this point, like, make the vision work with good material. And in that sense, in editing my own films too, sometimes you have to lose something beautiful, and you literally have to just delete a scene that maybe took days to make and looks really nice and is well acted and well written, and it's like you sacrifice it for the greater good kind of thing. You know, you cut this good scene out and the whole movie's suddenly better. And that's happened to me a number of times. And so and then through that process, you know, the expression, kill your darlings. We had that, I think, in he and I, when we were editing this book as well, was I could spend I think there was a whole action scene that I wrote that took me a really long time to write. And he said, this is good, but we're really getting off base and we don't need any of it. You know, they get in the car and they get away. Thanks, and then that's it. You don't have to do all the rest of it. I'm like, you sure? Because, you know, it's been a long time. And it was like whole extra chapters. And and I think when he and I go, we've done a number of interviews together, and he talks about how I, as a screenwriter, checked some of his like excesses with rambling. And maybe that's true for certain points, but there's definitely points where by having my novelist hat on, was again thinking, oh, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. And then he was the one who was getting me to focus. So I think we each probably played that role for each other, which was good. Oh, good. But it made it not that hard to see he was right. It wasn't just about trusting him. It was about realizing he's right. You know, not just knowing, okay, he's probably right because he's Nelson DeMille. It was like realizing he's right, and then being like, okay, I'm going to take all this and throw it in the trash.
Well, your father's old school. I'm going to go with, and he writes longhand on legal pads, and I'm pretty sure you don't.
Yeah.
So how does that play out when you guys are putting your thoughts together and collaborating? How do you guys exchange those ideas? Is it all verbal? Is he sending you like notes in the mail? Like what's happening? How do you guys do it?
Most of the time, for almost every chapter, I would say I would, on a computer to write in Microsoft Word, would write my first draft, email it to his assistant. She would print it out, put it on his desk. He'd take his number one pencil, read it, scribble all over it, and then give it back to his assistant. She would scan the pages and then email a PDF to me of his scribble, which most of it. So I have all these amazing like PDFs on my computer now of it's just like, and sometimes it's little things, and sometimes it's you see these giant swoops over the rearranging sentences and it was kind of fun to get it that way, because otherwise, like if he was also working in Word, you could try to do like track changes, but that ends up getting pretty. It's pretty confusing, and there's almost something. It's not as visually. It's more jumbled and confusing. To realize what did he take out, what did he change. And so it was kind of nice to have these documents where I could see it quite literally. And every once in a while, I could read most of his handwriting from growing up with him. Every once in a while, I just would not know what the hell word was. So I would just take a screenshot of it and email it to his assistant. And I would say, "What is this word?" 9 times out of 10, she knew. And then sometimes she'd say, "I don't know what that is. I'll go upstairs and ask him." And then if he was doing anything more extensive, like inserting an entire 2 paragraphs, or occasionally I have to admit, rewriting a scene or part of a scene, he would just take out his legal pad, write it, but instead of me getting those scans, he'd give it to his assistant. She would type it up as a document and email it to me. But as far as the logistics of it, I was always the one that kind of had the master file of the book. So, which I think probably frustrated his assistants a little bit, because they're used to doing that, but they had to kind of check in with me about like what are we on? This is like version 5 of chapter 6, but we're on to version 12 of chapter 2, and it got a little crazy. But by the end, we figured out the system, and in a way, it kind of helps that he was doing it his way and I was doing it my way. And I don't know how I can't. He swears by it, but he doesn't know another way. I don't know. I can't possibly write like that. It takes me too long.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody could now.
No, I don't.
But it's got to be
not
so
that
cool
uncommon, actually. It's not. I know a couple other people that surprised me to find out they write it longhand. So.
Oh, really? Are they his age, or are they younger?
Yeah, they're not younger.
I know some younger people that do it, actually.
Huh.
So, but talking about that and just talking about like even the writing out part, but the different styles between you two, clearly there's probably some differences you could point out. How do you then take the different writing styles you may have, and how do you synthesize that into one fluid novel, basically?
I'm glad it felt fluid. It is a little, it was tricky sometimes, he has his kind of cadence and he has his style, and I was never going out of my way to depart from it. But like one of the first decisions I made, first things I proposed anyway to him was, I think we should write this novel in third person,
okay.
Because almost all of his books since I'm going to say probably at least Plum Island in the mid '90s, most of them have been first person, and he kind of started doing that. It worked for him when he created the John Corey character, and he obviously felt kind of. I think he suddenly felt like this was an easier way for him to express himself, and also his kind of sense of humor. So he's mostly been doing first person ever since then. And for as much as I've written prose lately, I felt I'd be more comfortable in third person, and it would kind of force a departure from his style, up front. And it would probably allow me to do a little bit more of the descriptive prose that I missed being able to do in a screenplay, because you really have to be careful to not overdo it. If you do, you're gonna piss people off, and you're also gonna look like an amateur. If you really go out of your way to you want to be able to guide the reader to see what the film's gonna look like without looking like you're doing it. It's just a dance. I'm sure you guys know that. It's kind of like a written script. It's a little bit of a dance. And with this, I thought with third person, I can go on about what the hills look like without it being weird that the guy is like talking about the hills. So you're in Scott Brody's point of view, but you're a little bit outside of his point of view too.
Did that take a lot of convincing, or was he like, yeah, okay, let's go that way?
He wasn't that happy about it, but he liked my reasons for it, and he said, okay, sure. He's like, I'm not. He didn't feel comfortable returning to that, I think, because he thought it just wouldn't be as easy for him. But I think being as I was writing the first draft of everything, I think he's like, okay, at least I'll have this template, and then I can do my thing within it. And it doesn't change dialogue. There's a lot of things it doesn't change, but
well, you guys made it work.
What's that?
You made it work. It comes off flawless.
Thanks. It's funny the way certain readers, I think I've got a couple notes of like, I felt little more distant from the characters. I didn't know why, you know. Like, well, yeah, the whole voice is intentionally a different point of view, but
Right.
yeah, but but aside from that, there were times when I'm trying to think. There was some things with, let's say, describing action, you know, where I had a way of doing it that sometimes the writing didn't necessarily match always the pacing of what was happening, you know, because I mean, you have to kind of, in screenplays, it's important to be able to do that, but then there's a different art to do the same thing with prose, and I think that took me a little time to learn. So he had a bit of a heavy hand sometimes with the action. There's an early kind of car chase, you know, as you guys know, in the air, you know, after they're at the airport. And that was kind of the first time we were doing that, and he had a lot of involvement in that because the way I was writing it wasn't I knew it wasn't working, but through that he and I edited and revised that together, and I kind of felt like that set me on a course of, okay, now I kind of get
how cool is it,
getting a little bit of the secret sauce of how he's doing what he does.
I was going to say, how cool is it to know that you have you know, I mean, he's your father, but it's Nelson DeMille looking over your shoulder saying, let's go this way. Let's do it.
Right.
Come here, you.
Yeah. And then the other thing is the humor. I mean, I grew up with his humor, but it's not quite the same. And I said to myself, I'm never gonna try to be funny unless I can be funny. You know, like, I'm not gonna write a bunch of stinkers, or I'm not gonna posture about the comedy. If I think there's something funny, I'm gonna write it. And if I can't see there being something funny, I'm going to kind of leave it out. And that's fine. And then, believe it or not, of course, he finds some wise ass thing to write into there. You know, I mean,
he's able to pull the humor into it.
Yeah. I mean, he's talked about that as coming from his days as a soldier. You know, he's saying they would crack jokes literally while being shot at. You know,
right.
Yeah.
That dark humor.
We're going in like the slums and outside Caracas, which is just like such level of human misery, and I'm like, there's nothing funny about any of this, you know. But then the thing about him is the jokes aren't, I don't think anyway, they're not punching down, you know, and they're not making fun of vulnerable people. If anything,
it's different,
self-deprecating, or they're or making fun of authority in some way, you know. So I always
it's actually you know, because I've been in law enforcement for almost 20 years now. It's a coping mechanism. It's purely what it is. It's just the coping mechanism. And soldiers do it in battle, and
we do it. We do it in the hospitals. I mean, we could be in a horrible situation in the operating room, and we're no different than military or law enforcement or anything.
That's interesting. Yeah, that totally makes sense. You know, which is why I think probably people who a lot of artists who aren't exposed to those kinds of things take themselves too seriously, because they're not forced to be in those situations where they have to develop.
Yeah, it's a blow off event. Yeah, I was going to ask you, when your dad first approached you with all this, was there any point, because you've talked about where you didn't travel and research and whatnot, was there ever any point initially where you thought, is he just bringing me on so he can send me to all these places that he doesn't want to go to?
I hope not.
Get your visa to Caracas. Let's go.
Yeah, come on, son.
Well, I mean, it was totally my fault that they ended up in Caracas, so I take responsibility for that one. And I think, although I was talking to him about going, I was expecting him as a parent to tell me, no, don't go. But he was like, no, you should go, you know, and just look around the airport, you know, take a cab to a nice hotel, and then you just do that, and then you can come home.
Sure.
Like, I was expecting him to like kind of give me permission to not go. So, and so the only other place he didn't travel for research was Yemen. He wrote The Panther, set in Yemen, but he was planning on going, and the only thing that stopped him was the Arab Spring. I mean, Yemen was very dangerous before the Arab Spring, but he was going to go anyway. And it wasn't until there was literally an anti-government uprising leading into a civil war that he changed his mind. So
probably smart.
There's definitely times where I'm like, I really should have gone, you know. But that's only more about my own ego than I think the book, you know. Yeah.
So I want to step away from the book for just a second. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and when I would tell people I was going to be a writer, I might as well have said, I'm going to be the first person to colonize Mars. I mean, that was the looks I got.
Right.
You, on the other hand, grew up with a man who made his living as a creative. So what I'm curious about is, how did that shape both your approach to what you were going to do and just, your attitude towards your own path?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it definitely, I think it was one of the greatest gifts I got was an assumption, not an assumption that I could be as successful as him, but an assumption that I could try, So I was writing, doing creative writing since I was like, maybe 10, and, making movies as hobbies and these kinds of things. And when I studied history in college, and then soon afterwards, I told him I wanted to go to film school. He said, great, and then when I was in film school, met most of my friends told the stories that you mentioned and they weren't necessarily, some of them did come from small towns, but even the people who grew up in Los Angeles or grew up in New York or other, Boston, said they had to have these big fights with their parents. And my wife, even who's now a successful cinematographer, her father's an engineer, and she said, I want to be a cinematographer. And he basically told her, well, you're not getting a degree in that, study,
Get
study
a
something
fallback
real
plan.
and useful, and then maybe you can. And now they're fun. No, now of course now they're very proud of her.
Yeah,
And they're very supportive. But it's, I totally get it. And maybe for him, I don't know. It's hard to say because why did I get into film instead of trying to be a writer? I think I was probably, at least subconsciously, a little worried about trying to do something too similar to what he's doing, because okay,
how do you make your own name?
If I go down this exact same road and then I'm not doing it as well as he is, then that's going to make me feel like crap, And also, I mean, I love filmmaking anyway, so it felt to me like, okay, this is something that's in the ballpark. And I was encouraged. I wouldn't say that we talked about the craft all that much. I read his books, but I never sat him down and really asked him like, how do you do this and blah blah blah. It just kind of was like through osmosis more than anything. Yeah, except for the I want to say the routine of it, which I was always interested in, because it's just hard, so hard, I'm sure as you guys who are, if you're writers, that it's just hard to sit down and force yourself to do it sometimes. So I would ask him about that, and he would just tell me about drinking 2 pots of coffee and smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. That sounds pretty unhealthy. But,
or you just do this a little bit,
I've tried that too. That didn't work. I tried that. I'm like, that sounds like a romantic thing to do,
Where's my
Hemingway?
pipe? Here's my.
Yeah, exactly.
Until he shot himself.
Maybe he would have been better. Though. Maybe James Joyce would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So Alex, speaking of being on your own path, now that you've got this first novel out, do you plan to do more novels in the future? And would you do more collaborations in the future, or would you do solo novel going forward?
Well, we have so in his contract, he has 2 more co-authored books. So unless this one totally bombs, I think we're doing another one.
So he might grab you again.
There's no bomb.
Yeah. I mean, I already wrote an outline for the next one, and cool. We haven't shared it with the publishers yet, but we are just about ready to turn it into them. So we'll see what they have to think.
Oh, nice.
Basically,
Super cool.
Same 2 characters, Scott Brody, Maggie Taylor, investigating basically a murder of one of their own, a fellow CID special agent who's found dead in an apartment in Berlin.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, so that's because I've always wanted to write something, either film or a book. I've always wanted to set something there, and it's one of my favorite cities. I've been there a number of times. He's been there a number of times, so I thought, and I wouldn't mind going back. Unlike Caracas, I wouldn't mind doing research there. I don't know. Have you guys been?
A while back, but I can see kind of the romantic side of that too. It just has that old spy romantic kind of setting in a modern, in a new modern city, but it still has that same vibe. So
it does, and then it also has this like anything happening in Europe, as far whether it's controversial or exciting or whatever it is, it's like it feels like it's happening there. I mean,
right? You
have the refugees, you have obviously the rise of far right nationalists, and there's just a lot of good and a lot of bad all happening there.
Yeah, there's richness to pull from.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that. So hopefully the publishers is too. And then and there's a third one. We'll see. As far as my own stuff, I've thought about it a little bit. I mean, I have some ideas where I'm like, I still, now that I have this new kind of pathway opening up, like, I thought that maybe that could be a good script. Maybe that's a book, or vice versa.
Yeah.
we'll see. If I write on my own, I just know ahead of time. I could be. We'll see after 2 more books, but at the moment, I wouldn't really probably feel comfortable writing military characters without him. Honestly,
Yeah.
he's got that. He's been in it. He knows that he has this kind of intimate cultural understanding, and
Yeah, you can
not that
draw from
everybody
it.
who writes about the military has to be in the military, but I don't know. We'd have to see. But I maybe it's something in the ballpark of his work.
Well,
Cool.
Alex,
go ahead, Sean.
I just want to follow up real quick. I know it's early in your novelist career, but has it generated any heat out west? The sort of the notoriety you're getting for this book. Has it kind of had a couple people answer calls that maybe didn't answer them before, or reach out to you?
I haven't pursued anything on my own. I was wondering if that might happen, and maybe it will. I mean, what my dad said to me was, if this is a bestseller, then the people are gonna, who didn't notice before might start to notice.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I've been asked about, would you adapt this into a script? And maybe, but I think, first of all, logistically, I don't have time right now because I'm working on the next book, and I'm not sure if I'm the best person to do it anyway because I'm pretty close to it. But our agents mentioned there are a couple of writers who were interested in adapting it. I'm not sure. They were very vague about it, so I didn't want to push it until they have more to say. But we'll see. I mean, I hope so. His books have had. I don't think they've done as well as they deserve to in Hollywood.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I agree. Pretty good movie. But I think John Corey could be the way that like Connolly's Harry Bosch is. You could do a really good, serialized
series,
right? Like Amazon, Netflix, one of those. The thing with Connolly is he's heavily involved. He kind of shepherded that whole thing.
Well, he's all in it.
Yeah,
his fingers are all over that.
Exactly.
And that's why it works. It's so good.
Exactly.
Well, and I think that's also why they nailed the Harry Bosch casting. I think John Corey, I think about ever since I first read John Corey, I'm constantly casting him in my head.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier. I said, I think moonlighting era Bruce Willis was would have been great for him. But now it's hard to find somebody that has
who would have been
charisma.
Who's young Bruce Willis? That's the big question.
Yeah, right.
It's funny because they actually he talked to Bruce Willis about doing it back in the day. He got a call from, this is his story. He said he was in his office and he got a call, and his assistant said, you have Bruce Willis on the phone. He thought she was joking. He patched him through and he said, Nelson, this is Bruce Willis. Everybody's telling me I need to be John Corey. I was like, okay. And he's like, who is he? He hadn't read any of the books. He just called me and said, who is this guy?
Called out of the blue?
Yeah. And then he's like, oh yeah, I think that would be great. This was back in I would probably say the late 90s. But the thing is, he doesn't have the interest in getting involved in the process the way that Connolly has. He just doesn't.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a
lot of work. And he doesn't have the love. I think you got to have a love for it. He doesn't have any kind of love for Hollywood. So, yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, we're gonna transition to what we call the lightning round. And so we've told past guests we don't really put a lot of thought into these questions, so we don't really expect you to put a lot of thought in your answers. So just blurt out what you think is a good answer. So I'm going to start.
Okay.
And my first question is, so now that you're a novelist, you've decided that your next book is going to be a romance novel.
Mm-hmm.
What's the title?
Oh God, I don't know.
Come on, don't you put too much thought into it.
Too much thought.
Yeah.
Right. I thought of something. I'm like, that sounds grim. That doesn't sound romantic. That's my problem. I
Do it.
My head
Just say it.
The Forgotten.
The Forgotten.
Yeah.
It's a dark romance.
Birthdays,
novel.
anniversaries.
Right.
All right, so you're a New Yorker, and I think you've read, or you told us that you live in Brooklyn. So which is a better neighborhood, Brooklyn Heights or Park Slope?
I'm going to say Park Slope, but I prefer my own neighborhood of Fort Greene to either of them.
Oh, okay. There you go. I used to work in Brooklyn Heights.
It's very nice there. It's very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So New Yorkers love their steakhouses. What's the best one in New York?
I'm going to say, I mean, this is an obvious answer, but Peter Luger's. Can't beat it. You got the surly waiters, good atmosphere, not too nice looking inside. It's good.
Yeah. So if anyone's visiting New York City and they want a great steakhouse and they've never been to Peter Luger's, you have to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bring
also
cash.
I like Keynes in Manhattan. I thought that's a pretty good one too.
Yeah. So you're going out for drinks, and you have to invite a character from Sesame Street. I know you said you have a toddler, so
Goodness.
who you bringing with you from Sesame Street?
Character from Sesame. Do I want to get drunk with?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I definitely. I'm gonna have to say like Grover. He's on Sesame Street, right?
Yeah, Grover.
Yeah,
He's a party animal.
Kind of. He'd be a fun drunk. You wouldn't want to bring like Oscar the Grouch.
I thought you were going to pick Oscar. Grover would be a fall down drunk. I think that's
Yeah, it'd be funny. It'd be really funny to see him drunk. Oscar would just be sad.
And Elmo would, you don't even know where Elmo's hands would be going. Oh my. So you're a screenwriter. You did some stuff in Hollywood. So your life is turned into a movie. Who plays you?
Oh God. Me. That's not anything I ever considered. Well, if I'm allowed to time travel, I'm going to say young Pacino.
Sweet.
Why not, dude? That's awesome.
Who wouldn't?
Actually, the technology now, they could have old Pacino play you.
Yeah,
and then they'll
exactly.
just,
True.
Do the creepy CGI face on him.
All right, I'm up. All right, you have to pick one of two TV shows to be on. Is it Fear Factor or Naked and Afraid?
I think it's going to be Fear Factor. I'd rather eat like a bug than to do that.
Then get malaria.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Get molested by some unknown bug. All right, thrown into a pit of venomous snakes or hungry rats?
Oof. I'm going to have to go with the snakes. I'd rather just die than get like slowly nibbled up, you know?
I think I'm with you on that one.
And the rats chew off your nose.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we all know this answer, but we have to ask it just to see if there's anything we don't know about you. New York or Chicago pizza?
Oh, New York pizza.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
a question.
I do like Chicago pizza. I just don't. It's not pizza. It's like a delicious, greasy casserole. You know.
Casserole, yeah.
3-inch thick. Yeah. All right. Your favorite childhood Halloween costume?
Of my own.
Yeah.
All right. I was. Well, this is kind of the stupidest one. I went to. I was a two-headed monster with my friend, and my mom made us like a felt like things. We were just like tied together the entire night.
Did you have to walk together the whole time?
Yeah, we had to walk together in sync.
Nice.
At some point, that had to get annoying. At some point.
Yeah, it did. But we were both young enough that we didn't. Yeah.
Oh.
Did you tie your legs together?
That would have been funny. We should have.
Oh man, I think how trash that costume got at the end of the night. All right, this one's about Star Wars. Which character is more annoying, Jar Jar Binks or Ewoks?
Come on.
Oh, Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Hands down. Yeah.
We just had to verify that with you.
Yeah.
So mine are not nearly as entertaining as theirs. So, but I'm curious. What is your favorite Nelson DeMille book?
Ooh.
I'd say I got two favorites, both Long Island books, either the Gold Coast or Plum Island.
Plum Island's mine.
Oh yeah, like Plum Island.
Great choices. All right. So who is your dad more like, John Corey or Paul Bremer?
I think to most people he's more like Paul Bremer, but in private more like John Corey.
Okay.
Wow.
Good info. Good info.
By which I mean his own, his internal monologue, which then comes out, when he's not trying to be nice. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't think you could write John Corey if there's not a little bit of John Corey inside you.
Of course. Yeah.
So, what is your favorite aspect of filmmaking? Writing, directing, or editing?
Directing. It's the thing I've had the least opportunity to do, but it is the most exhilarating and pleasurable and difficult. It's the actual hours of doing it are not as much, but they're like the most intense hours of my life, probably.
Gotcha. So is Alex DeMille more Yale or more UCLA?
God, I guess I have to say more Yale. I mean, I love Los Angeles, but I wouldn't really like tie a lot of my identity or personality to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have to lose one of your 5 senses. Which one do you lose?
Touch, taste, smell. I have to think what they all are. Probably it's gonna have to be smell. I mean, that one, nobody needs that.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
And then you can't taste anything.
You'll lose some weight too, so
I
you're
know.
good.
But I have like bad allergies. I already know what that's like.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think I'm up. So keep it on the film discussion here. So the best film that very few people have ever heard of.
Okay.
Or seen.
Okay.
I should say.
I'm gonna go with I have a filmmaker who's Tarkovsky, so I'm trying to think of which one would be, more obscure, but that I really loved. It's a well-known film among some people, but I would say Stalker by Tarkovsky. It's a really, really cool, if you guys, it's like these people in the post-apocalyptic place somewhere in Siberia. It's a dark.
I do not know this one.
We created this podcast just so we could get movie and book
get film ideas.
It's slow as hell, but it's a good. If you watch it all in one sitting in a dark room with a drink, it's a really good movie.
Okay,
sounds like my life.
That's.
So I think we already asked you about steakhouses in New York City. But your favorite restaurant in the city, and you could include Brooklyn. The whole New York City, every borough, whatever.
I'm honestly not even because I think it's the best food, but just as a favorite spot is Bamonte's in Williamsburg.
Yeah,
just an old red wallpaper, chandeliers, waiters in tuxes, really fancy for 1955, mobbed up place. And it's just
that'd be so cool.
It's really good basic food and it's fun.
But
cool.
Sit with your back to the wall.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. There's doorbells on the wall, and I have to ask around about why there are doorbells. And I don't know if this is apocryphal, but it's supposed to be so that if there's mob guys there and they if they want the waiter, they use the little button, and nobody comes by unless they're requested.
They've been told
shut
to
up.
come.
Yeah, exactly. New York Knicks or the Nets?
I don't really care about professional sports, to be honest with you. Not that I don't care about it. I just don't follow it.
Don't follow it.
Sorry, that's a boring one.
That's a safe answer.
He's too busy. He's too busy.
No, I don't know.
This one you care about a little bit more, so we'll see which one you prefer: Spielberg or Scorsese.
That's tough. That's tough. I think to sound edgy, I should say Scorsese, but I would say probably I gotta go with Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you.
On the scope of what they've done.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could have directed one movie that was made during your lifetime and you could have been the director, which one would you have picked?
That's a good question.
Which is probably almost like your favorite movie, but from a director's standpoint.
Yeah, no, that's good. I don't think it's quite the same answer. I'm going to say, and this is back to Berlin, I'm going to say The Lives of Others, which was just a really effective film about a period film about Stasi. And the other one, which is more probably my favorite film, would be Mulholland Drive, David Lynch.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Good movie.
Dude, you survived.
Ooh, you made it by this much.
You completely survived. But I do have one last question. I think is it's just been percolating in my head.
Yeah.
So you're growing up with a well-known author as your dad. Did he ever invite someone famous to your house that you just totally geeked out over?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. No, but I have a funny story that he used to have a Thanksgiving Eve party every year. And
right.
He'd invite all his friends in town, and then when I was younger, I'd invite my friend, and we have our kids party off to the side. And when this was probably around the time of the general's daughter being out, and a friend of mine spread the rumor to the rest of them. First of all, he forgot it was John Travolta in the movie. He thought it was Sylvester Stallone. So he told everybody that Sylvester Stallone was going to be at the party. Everybody didn't even know why would they didn't even know he was friends with him, and everybody people legitimately believed it, and then they showed up and they were pretty disappointed. But I don't
totally
know.
Cool. So he faked everybody out.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, that's it, folks. So The Deserter by Alex DeMille and his father Nelson DeMille is out in stores now. I want to thank Alex for taking the time to come by and spend time with the crew. And let's offer up a toast.
Thank you. Cheers. I only got coffee.
Cheers to you. Hey, whatever you got.
Talk to you guys. Salute.
Thanks a lot.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks very much. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks for sticking around for another great episode of the Crew Reviews podcast. I want to thank our guest tonight, Alex DeMille, whose fantastic debut, The Deserter, is now available everywhere. So go out and buy it. And if you enjoyed the show, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. Then hit the like button. And before you go, leave a comment. We're going to pick someone who comments and send them a signed copy of The Deserter. So what are you waiting for? Do it. Have a great day, everyone. We can't wait to see you on the next Crew Reviews podcast. Boys?
Another good one, boys. Salute.
Thanks for sticking around for another great episode of the Crew Reviews podcast. I want to thank our guest tonight, Alex DeMille, whose fantastic debut.
I thought you were going to say something about his fantasy. I was like, wait a second.
His fantasies include.
Whoa. The Cruise After Dark is kicking on now, gentlemen.
Okay.
That was fantastic.
One take.
Yeah, so note to self, don't drink 5 iced teas at freaking lunch. Because
Dude, I was like,
you think I got to piss?
Gotta get a prostate check here pretty soon.
I'm telling you, man.
I'd start rambling about something and be like, all right, thank you very much.
Well, the good news is this format is set up for rambling.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't like to look at myself.
But let's all be honest, Alex, nobody really cares or gives two shits about us.
No.
They want to hear about you.
My mom watches this, though, so I get that.
That's about, yeah.